Welcome back to part 2 on finding things in an array. In the last one, we learned about index of and find index. We learned that index of always uses triple equals, which means that it's not a great fit for arrays of objects, which we want to be able to model real world things. So we switched over to find index, which allows us to specify our own way to compare two things. In this case, we're looking at the titles. In this video, we're going to break this out into a more real-world example by creating a function that works with our notes, and we're going to explore another method, and we'll wrap things up with a challenge where you're going to need to add a few functions for the to-do application, as well as convert the array to an array of objects, adding in more properties. Let's go ahead and start with the beginning now. So what I want to do is remove all of the code right here since we no longer need it. If you want to remember it, don't worry, it's still available in the previous lecture zips, and I also talk about it in the PDF guide for the course. Right here, what we're going to do is create a new function, const find note, and I am going to set this equal to, and what we're going to do is define a new function, and it's going to take in two arguments. It's going to take the notes you're searching through, and it's going to take the note title that you're looking for. So note title, for example. Now we're going to set up find note to return the actual note object if we find one, and we'll return undefined otherwise. So we're not going to return the index, not particularly useful in the end of the day. What we want to do is return the actual note object so we can do something meaningful with it. In this case, dump it to the terminal. Later in the course, show it in the web browser. So down below, if we were to call find note, it would work a little bit like this. We would maybe store the return value, the note that we found, and we would call find note, passing in something like the notes we're searching for. Currently, we have that in the notes array, and the text we're looking for. So we could say find a note where the title is office modification, where capitalization is indeed important, but once again, that's something we could adjust for later. Then down below, we would console.log the note just like this. And there we go. We would be able to see the note if it was found, or we would see undefined otherwise. Let's go ahead and actually get this in action. Down below, I'm going to comment out all of the other lines we have so far, and we're going to focus on just this stuff, just on our array of notes and the find note function. So what's the goal here? The goal is to find the note. So we'll start by using find index to get its index. We'll then be able to use the bracket notation we already explored to actually get back the object. So I can go ahead and search for it right here. Const index. I can set it equal to. Here we're going to use notes dot find index, just like we did below. We pass in our function. The function gets called with those two arguments. We get called with the note and the index. Now you don't have to name index if you're not actually using it, so you could leave it like this. I'm just providing it here to remind you that you do have access to both of these. Later in the course, when we get more comfortable with the methods, we can just define the ones that we're actually using. So what's the goal inside of here? The goal is exactly what we did down below. It is to return true or false, depending on whether or not that note title equals what was passed in. In this case, what was passed in below was a static string, so nothing was really passed in, making this code not particularly reusable. Up above, though, we're defining a function that can be called as many times as we like. So what we're going to do is take that second argument, which is a string, and use that in our comparison equality operator. So right here, triple equals note title. Let's take a quick moment to break down what we have so far. So we call find note, we pass in the array to search and the search text we're looking for. So we can forget everything else. We can focus on just this function, knowing we have an array and some text. Inside of this function, we use find index on the array in an attempt to find the note whose title matches note title. How do we do that? Well, in the function for find index, that's what we specify. We check if note title equals the note title that was passed in. If it does, we're going to return true, meaning that is the match. If it doesn't, we're going to return false. Now we go through the entire array. If at any point in that search process we find a match, we store the index in the index variable. If we get to the end and we don't find a match, we store -1. That means at this point, we have access to that number up above. It's either -1 for no match, or it is the actual index. Now we can focus on what we actually return from find note, because remember, this return statement is related to this function, not to the find note function. What are we trying to return? The note. So we're going to access that notes array. We're going to use bracket notation to get the note by index. For example, in the past, we typed in a number. In this case, we're still using a number, but it's not a number we type right in line. It's a number that comes from a variable. So I reference the index variable up above. If index is 0, we'll get the first one back, obviously going all the way up to whatever the array length is. If it's -1, we'll get undefined back, and that is exactly what we're hoping for if we don't have a match. Let's go ahead and save notes and see what happens. I'm going to save the file and rerun things from the terminal, node notes.js, and when I do, I get my note showing up. I get office modification. It was indeed a match. Now this is great because we can really customize how we search for things, but we could even take things a step further. Right now, what we have using triple equals is a case-sensitive search. So I have uppercase O and uppercase O. If I were to search for office with a lowercase o, I would no longer have a match. Over here, what do I get? I get undefined coming back. Well, we can actually go ahead and modify what qualifies as a match. To do that, we have two strings. How do we fix this problem? We just convert them both to either all uppercase or all lowercase, taking the case out of the equation altogether. I'm going to go ahead and use to lowercase. So to lowercase right here on this string, that's title, and the same thing over here, to lowercase. So we convert both of them to lowercase, then we check if those are equal. That's going to create a case-insensitive search, where this would be considered a match since we convert all of the characters to lowercase before comparing them. If we rerun the program, we now have our program working as we wanted to. We have our case-insensitive search, and once again, we're getting office modification showing up. So being able to customize what qualifies as a match goes a long way towards creating a real-world application that's not going to frustrate and piss off your users. Just one more method I want to explore, and then it's challenge time. So in this case, we're using find index to find the index, and then we're directly grabbing that item out of the array. There's actually a function that does some of this for us, making our life a bit easier. In the documentation, the one we're looking for is just called find. Find pretty much functions exactly as we set up the find note method. We specify our search criteria by passing in a function, and when we find it, we get that item back as opposed to getting its index back. Let's go ahead and see how this would change things in our program. Now I am going to leave this function completely intact. What I'm going to do is take it, copy it, duplicate it down below, and then comment that version out, and up above we'll work on a modified version. I can also remove the comments down below, no longer any need for those. And now up above, we're going to modify our function. Now, most things are going to stay exactly the same, and the reason is that the call signature for find index and find are identical. So we can literally just swap out the method name. We still get this function called, we still get the note, the individual item, and the index, which means that down below, all of our code still references things that actually exist. Now find, once again, it goes through your array from beginning to end. Once your function returns true, it stops, just like find index. Although it doesn't return the index of the match, it returns the match itself, which means that what we get here is not index, it would be more appropriately called note. We could then return note down below to wrap up our alternative version. Now it's important to note that while find does return the object, it will return undefined if no match is found, much like find indexed returned -1 if no match was found. So if you're looking for the item directly, find is a great choice. If you're looking for the index to do something like remove it by its index, then find index is a great choice. Both of them are super similar. The only difference is what you get back from the method. Now we can simplify this further. We create a variable, and then the only thing we ever do with it is return it. We could just add the return right here. So I remove the const, the variable name, and the equal sign, and I directly return whatever comes back from our find method call. Now I can return remove this last line, and there is our modified version. Now, both of those would be considered fine ways to get the job done in terms of code quality and performance. I'm just showing you two different ways we can work with our arrays when it comes to finding things. Now, let's prove that it actually still works by rerunning the script. I'll rerun it. I do get office modification showing up. And if I were to change this to something that doesn't match, like some other office modification, I would expect to still get undefined back. And if I run the script, that is exactly what we get. All right, last comment before the challenge. It's that arrays are also passed by reference, which means that if I pass an array into a function and I make a change to that array, I'm going to see it reflected in the original one, just like we saw with our objects. I pass an object in, I change the object, the original object is also changed. That means if in find note, I did something like notes.push and added on a new note, it wouldn't just change the local array, it would also change the one that was passed in, which is this guy up above. So it's important to keep that in mind. Notes.push isn't modifying some sort of clone, it's actually modifying that original array. Now, the reason I tell you that is because you're going to have to use just that to complete the challenge. So over in todo.js, it's going to be up to you to write a little bit of code and make some changes to some existing stuff. I'm actually going to kick things off by deleting all of the code we have so far and outlining what I'd like it to do inside of comments. The first of two things I want you to do is the easy one. This is to just convert the array of strings up above to an array of objects. The array of strings limits our ability to model a to-do accurately. We're going to switch to an array of objects so we can add on more properties to make our to-dos more real world, like knowing whether or not they were completed. So right here, convert array to array of objects. And each of our to-dos, each object in that array is going to have two properties. The text is just the string we have above, so we already have that information. And the other one is going to be a completed property, which is going to be true if the to-do is completed and false otherwise. Now, when you convert your items, make some completed and some not completed just to switch things up. That's step one. Step two is going to be to create a function that works with the array of objects, and the one that you're going to create is going to allow us to remove a to-do. Right here, create function to remove a to-do by text value. So I want to be able to provide some text like buy food to remove that item from the array completely. Now it is going to be an array of objects, so we're going to need to use some of the methods we just talked about. Down below, I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to give you the function call, so we're all on the same page, and a quick console.log. So the function is going to work a bit like this. You could call it something like delete to do. It's going to take the array that you're looking for, the thing to remove should live inside of there, and it's going to take the text for the thing to remove. So I could say I'm trying to remove the to-do with a text value of buy food. Now notice that the cases do not match up, so I want you to make this search case insensitive just like we did before. Now the delete to do function doesn't need to return anything. If it finds a match, it's going to delete it. If it doesn't find a match, it's going to delete nothing, and then what we're going to do down below is use console.log to print the to-dos array to see exactly what changed. So in this case, I would expect one of the items to be deleted. If I had it on some extra characters, I would expect the to-dos array to remain unchanged since delete to do wouldn't find a match. Now, when it comes to the contents of that function itself, you're going to have to use the techniques we just learned about. How do we delete a to-do? Well, we talked about how to delete an item from an array based off of its index, which means that you need to find the index of the item. If it is found, if it's 0 or greater, you want to use the other method we explored to actually delete the item. If it's not found, you don't have to do much of anything. Now, I'm not telling you what the specific methods are because I want you to start remembering this stuff, or at least refer back to previous code and videos. If you have to refer back to those, that's perfectly fine. In the real world, people use resources every single day to actually develop at their job. When I'm creating courses or working on client projects, you better believe I'm on Stack Overflow and MDN, either remembering how something works because I haven't used it in a while, or learning something for the very first time. So take some time to knock this one out. In the end of the day, make sure it does work. Make sure the delete to do function deletes something if it exists and doesn't change the array if it doesn't exist. Pause the video, knock this one out, test your work. When you're done, come back and click play. All right, how'd that go? Let's kick things off by converting our array. I'm going to do that right here. Const to-dos equals an array of objects. Each object has two properties, text and completed. I'm going to move a little fast through this array creation process since you should already have it in place and it's pretty boring. So what I'm going to do is take this template of a to-do and copy it 4 more times. So right here, comma, space, paste it. And then I'll comma, space, paste for a total of 5 elements. Now in this case, we're getting some strange formatting. We'll talk about how to properly format documents in a little bit using Visual Studio Code. For now, I'm just going to highlight all of these lines and use Shift-Tab to de-indent them. Now we can actually fill things out. So the first one is order cat food. I have done that, so I'll leave that at true. Then down below, I have clean kitchen. I did not do that one, so I can go ahead and convert that completed value to false. Next up on the list, we have buy food. I went to the grocery store yesterday, so I'll leave that at true. Next after that, we have do work. I'm doing work right now, so clearly I'm not done. We'll switch that to false. And the last one is to exercise, which I have done. Excellent. So you should have created an array something like this, and once you have the array of objects, we can delete the array of strings. No need for that anymore. The next thing you needed to do was create that delete to do function. Now these challenges, as you can see, are going to start getting harder and harder, requiring you to put the pieces of the puzzle together. I'm going to be less explicit with how to solve a problem, and I'm going to be more general, telling you exactly what it should do, but not how it should do it. So let's go ahead and look at one way we could have gotten this done. We'll start by creating our function const delete to do, and we'll set it up as a function with the correct arguments. The first one being the to-dos to look through, and the second one being the text of the to-do to delete. You could have called that something like to-do text, and then we'll open and close those curly braces. Looks like I have one extra space right here. Not going to crash the program, but we do want to stick with consistent formatting. Now, we know how to delete something from an array. We use splice, and we know that splice requires the index of the item. So the first thing we're going to do is use find index to find the item in the array if it exists at all. Const index. We're going to call todos.findIndex, and we're going to call it with the function it expects. Now, remember, this function does take the arguments. We take in the individual to do in this case and the index. Since I know I'm not going to use the index, I'll just leave that off. And in here, all we have to do is set up the return statement. We return, and this is where we specify the criteria for saying that, yes, this to do matches this to do text. And for us, it's going to be accessing the to-do.text property. For a case-insensitive search, I'm going to convert it to lowercase using that method. Then we're going to check if that equals, and right here, we're going to look at the to-do text that was passed in, and we're going to convert that to lowercase as well. Now we're in a situation where we have the index. It's either -1 for no match, or it's 0 and above for a match. So I'm going to check if index is greater than -1. If it is greater than -1, we know we have a match. What are we going to do? We're going to remove an item. If it is -1, we don't even need to do anything. There's no need for an else clause. In here, let's go ahead and use todos.splice to remove the item. The first thing is the index where we're trying to start. We already have that value right there. The second one is the number of items to remove. We're just trying to remove 1, so we'll provide the static 1 right in line. And there we have it. This is all we need to do to create the delete to do function. Hopefully you were able to get at least part of that done, and maybe you even solved this whole thing. Let's go ahead and see if we solved the whole thing by running the script. Over here, I'm going to run the program. That is not the notes file, but the other file. So let me back out, todo.js. And when I run the file, what do I get? I get 4 items: order cat food, clean kitchen, do work, and exercise showing up. The removed item, buy food, is nowhere to be found. That means we did get an index back. the index was greater than -1, and we successfully removed it. Now remember, splice only works because arrays are also passed by reference. That means when we modify this array right here, it's going to change the one that was passed in, which is this guy up above. Down below, we can make sure it doesn't do anything if it doesn't find a match. Let's add some extra characters in. I'm just going to toss a couple exclamation marks up front, just some gibberish to make the two different, and I'll rerun the script. When I do, this time around, I can see that all 5 items are showing up. So nothing was removed because there was no match, and that is exactly what we were hoping for. All right, that is it for this video. We have our delete to do function in place. I have plenty more to say about arrays because they are so critical to structuring our application data. So we're going to continue talking about them in the next video by figuring out how we can filter our arrays. For example, what if we just want to get a list of the to-dos that have yet to be completed? Let's go ahead and jump right in.